focus is on how managers coach remote teams into sales champions. And before we jump into our topic today, just a little bit of a housekeeping here. Number one, if you do have questions, please keep them until the end, or just go ahead and type them in. I will see them and I will certainly respond at the end of the session to make sure we cover what's most relevant for you. Second thing, I do have a bonus at the end of this program that I'll be sharing with each of you. And finally, the content that you see here, don't worry if you can't write everything down. It is very content heavy because we're talking about the language of coaching and leadership. So don't worry, you're going to be getting this deck. I'll be posting it on LinkedIn, and you could always request it to me on LinkedIn or sending me an email at kr@keithrosen.com. So let's go ahead and dive into our program right now and set some expectations where what we'll be covering. So first and foremost, this is about developing a happy, motivated team of sales champions. And I find that so many managers spend time being strategic. They're focusing on their strategy, their sales strategy, their marketing strategy. The one thing that I don't see companies spend just as much time on is becoming a strategic communicator. And that's what this is about. You know, it's one thing to understand a framework, which I'll be sharing with you. It's an entirely other conversation to ensure that what you need from your team, you're creating the alignment, buy-in, and engagement that you need to achieve your goals. While doing so, you're actually going to save 20 hours a week by coaching people. The third objective is that I want for you to leave here with the unconditional confidence of a champion that I'll be able to share with you how to develop that in 5 minutes. Most important here is what is the language that you're using to have critical conversations. I'm spending most of my time working with managers and leaders coming to me, and of course I'm helping them with their coaching framework, but more so they're coming to me with issues like, Keith, I have to have this tough conversation, or, I'm dealing with an underperformer. I'm not certain how to approach this conversation, or, this person is a top performer, but they're really toxic and I don't know how to approach this. I don't want to deal with confrontation. Or what if you tarnish trust in a relationship, whether it's between a coworker, a prospect, or a client? How do you reset a relationship in one conversation? That's what we're going to be talking about today, and you will have these coaching talk tracks in your inbox tomorrow. So let's go ahead and jump into this. In terms of the remote workplace, in terms of kind of like the landscape of where we're at right now, while 77% of companies change their buying process, procurement process, decision-making process, only 17% of companies change their sales process. Well, no wonder why so many salespeople are not hitting their quota. The Gallup organization reports that 83% of employees are actively disengaged, the highest level ever. Approximately 68% of the global sales force missed their quota in 2022. Now let's bring this down to the root cause. 77% of sales leaders have never received training on how to coach, let alone how to coach and lead remotely. And neither have your salespeople. Finally, managers influence 75% of the reasons why employees leave organizations. If you're wondering why your attrition and turnover is increasing, the only thing you need to look at is the mirror and what you are doing to either drive your employees away or what you're doing to retain them, engage them, motivate them, keep them safe, and support them around their goals. What I find very interesting, especially today, is that a Harvard study showed that 58% of people trust strangers more than their boss. And a global study reported that 79% of people who quit their jobs cite lack of appreciation as their reason for leaving. So clearly, all salespeople are not coin operated. And when it comes to trust, when it comes to leaving because of a lack of appreciation, the root cause of all this are the critical conversations that managers need to have that they've never had before. Because if you're still selling and managing and coaching the way you did pre-pandemic, the way you are today, you're already set up for failure. There are new, deeper conversations that we all need to have as leaders that we've never had before. Because right now, today, the predominant sales and leadership strategy is one word: care. And if it's not enough to hear what I'm saying, the Carnegie Institute of Technology even found that 85% of your financial success is due to your personality and your ability to communicate, negotiate, and lead. Shockingly, only 15% is due to technical knowledge. That's why if you want to drive performance, it's not reminding your people of their quota. It's engaging them with conversations you've never had before. So let's go ahead and even the playing field right now. What is your definition of coaching? For us to continue our conversation today, let's make sure we all have alignment on what coaching even is. Now, I know everyone has their own definition of coaching. I'm not going to share a long academic definition. I'm going to share a very quick one for you. And here it is: the universal definition of coaching, the art and language of creating new possibilities. In every conversation, you are either opening up a new possibility, creating buy-in, building accountability and trust, or you're destroying it. So this is something I have never, ever shared publicly. This is something I share with my clients. And I think it's important that I finally shared it with you after 32 years of doing this and traveling to 76 countries on 6 continents. It's time that you get exposure to a simplified framework that I use to coach hundreds of thousands of managers globally. This is my Leads coaching framework, simplified. So there are other coaching frameworks out there. And if you do your research, you'll find that some of the other coaching frameworks are about 40 years old and have not even evolved since then, which makes them irrelevant today. So let's see what this framework looks like. I'm going to walk through it quickly. Remember, you're going to have these slides. Learn, enroll, assess, define, support. Those are the 5 steps in my coaching framework. Step number 1, learn. That's what the coachee does. They're coming to you. What's going on? They're coming to you for help, advice, guidance, subject matter expertise, experience. That's what they're looking for you for. They have the agenda. Enroll is now a good time to discuss the most effective way to achieve the results you want. What it's doing is taking the pulse of the person to ensure that the timing is right and they're open to having that conversation. Let's move to now step 3, assess. Very simple. Either you're making costly assumptions about every situation and people, okay, or you're assessing. So you're either assessing by asking questions or you're assuming the facts. And if you're assuming the facts, you can throw coaching out the window because you're not asking the most relevant questions you need to cause a breakthrough. So let's look at just a few questions that you can weave into every conversation under assess. Number 1, what's the ideal outcome you're looking for? Number 2, walk me through what you've tried so far and your approach. Number 3, how have you handled a similar situation before? Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering when you're coaching someone, Keith, is this a coaching issue or a training issue? There's the question that's going to uncover that. If you ask someone, how have you handled a similar situation like this before? And they said, Keith, I've never handled a situation like this before. Or if you asked, how much training have you had on X, Y, and Z? And they said, I've never had any training on X, Y, and Z. Or how much experience have you had around? And they say, I've had no experience. Training issue. If they've had experience, now it's a refinement and it's a coaching conversation. And finally, number 4, I want to call this out. When people use language, you must not make the assumption that the words they use are aligned with your definition. So when people use phrases like the customer is pushing back, or they're difficult, or they're having a hard time seeing value, or it's a budget issue, do you have any idea what that means to the other person? No, you don't. You only know what it means to you. So a springboard question goes deeper to get alignment and clarification. So for example, Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson, when you say that you're struggling with this one account and it's stressing you out, can you say a little more about that? How do you mean when you say struggling, stress, overwhelm, pushing back? So now we're done with assess. Now we're going to move to define, just like we are doing in a sales funnel. We are narrowing down root cause to uncover a new possibility. Now, of course, just in good communication practices, we need to recap to make sure that the information that we received was the information that was intended. And this is just good communication 101 skills. To recap, to ensure I've captured what you're sharing, what I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z. Is that accurate? Once you've confirmed that, you're going to move into some critical questions that you need to ask, because every question here I've narrowed down to be the non-negotiable questions you need to ask in every conversation. So question number one under define, what assumptions might you be making about? Fill in the blank. I guarantee you they're making assumptions which are getting in the way of generating the results they want, just like you are making assumptions in that very conversation, okay? So I guarantee they will share with you the assumptions that they're making, because we make hundreds in practically every conversation every day. Number two, what's the impact if you don't achieve your goal? That's called an implication-based question. Well, implication-based questions don't have to be negative. They can also be positive. What would it mean to you if you were able to achieve your goals? And finally, number three, expansion question, what else could be possible? So if a salesperson comes to you and says, you know what, boss, the deal is dead. And you say, well, why is it dead? And they say, well, because I sent the proposal and they didn't respond. Two choices. We'll get them next time, says the manager, or the manager can use expansion questions such as, okay, well, what else could be possible? What else could be possible? Maybe it landed in their junk folder. Okay, what else could be true? Maybe they're actually reviewing the proposal and they haven't had the time to connect with all the shareholders and stakeholders who are involved in this decision-making process. Oh, okay, well, what else could be possible? Maybe they're sick or on vacation. Point is, we've expanded that person's truth and peripheral vision. And finally, the billion-dollar question. What's your opinion on how to achieve the results you're looking for? Notice I'm not asking what your answer is, what your strategy is, what the solution is, because answers, strategies, and solutions can be right or wrong. Opinions are never right or wrong, and everyone has one. Once they share their opinion, you now know what they know, and you know what they don't. So now it's time for you to share your wisdom. It's not like managers never get to share their experience, wisdom, expertise, and observations. It's the order in which you do it. And notice the order is at the end, because now you know what the coachee knows and what they missed. Now you can't just jump in and share observations. Get permission, and this is the first step of enrollment. Can I share some ideas that would help you achieve the results you want and make you more successful? You've now set up the expectation of why you are going to be sharing the information you are. Now, once you do, you need to wrap up that conversation, create momentum and accountability. Okay, so what are you willing to commit to? By when? When should we reconnect to ensure you've achieved the result you want? And when managers ask me, Keith, how do I know if the coaching is working or it's successful? Ask them, how are you feeling about our conversation? What new possibility opened up here? And finally, rather than you do the work, just have the person text you or email you the commitments that they made, so they're the ones doing the work. Okay, well, there's the framework right there. So let's abandon some toxic thinking. Number one, I don't have time to coach. Well, what does that mean? You don't have time to ask these several questions that I just shared with you? If you believe you don't have time to coach, it's really simple. You're doing something else. You're not coaching. So I am going to share with you in 1 minute how you can coach someone in 60 seconds or less. So here we go. The paradox here is believing you have no time to coach actually costs you more time. So let's see why. Here's how to coach anyone in 60 seconds or less. You can run around being the chief problem solver all day, solving people's problems, adopting their issues, and now they become yours. And then you wonder why you're spending your entire day putting out fires and solving everyone's problems, and why you have a line out your proverbial door of people waiting to ask you questions, because every single time you give a solution, you're making them dependent on you. So managers say, Keith, it's easier to give the answer. Well, maybe you save a minute. I mean, that's what you're arguing about here, a minute. Well, you can give the answer today and you'll be giving them the answer the rest of their career. You coach them through this, get to root cause. Now you've resolved the situation completely. That's your lesson on time management. That's how you get your day back. So here's the strategy. 60-second coaching strategy. Someone approaches you. They're looking for your help, advice, support. This is something you can start with in every conversation, because if you have time to give an answer, you have time to ask a question. So here's the 60-second coaching strategy. Someone approaches you looking for help. Your response: I'm happy to share my opinion with you, Tim. However, you're much closer to this situation than I am, and I trust you and I trust your judgment. So what's your opinion on how to handle this? Move forward, communicate more effectively, fill in the blank. That's it. How long did that take? Probably less than 30 seconds. And I talk fast. But notice what this strategy does. It encapsulates everything in the leads framework. It lets them know you'll be sharing your opinion at the end. It lets them know that they are closer to the situation than you are, which is validating them. And you're letting them know that you trust them. What do you think that's going to do? Build trust. And then you ask that magical question: what's your opinion on how to resolve this? Here's the interesting thing. Most of the time, people have the answer. We're just not giving them the opportunity to hear their opinion because we're already overshadowing it with ours. So again, think of it this way. If time is the only constant, you have time to fight fires, but you don't have time to coach. That's why I said earlier, if you have time to give an answer, you have time to ask a question and coach. So let's move on now. We're going to be shifting gears now and focusing on the critical conversations that managers need to master to build a remote team of sales champions. Again, most managers have never been trained how to coach, let alone manage a remote team before. So just self-reflect on these questions. Where do you find 100% alignment among your team, your coworkers, your customers, and prospects? What conversations do you struggle with or avoid? Why? Do you fear confrontation or conflict? Number 3, how do you create buy-in? How do you hold people accountable and build impenetrable trust with each person? And how effective are you at repairing relationships? Finally, who is 100% responsible for each conversation? You are. You are responsible for the message delivered, and you are responsible for the message being received. It's not 50-50, it's not 70-30. Because when you take 100% accountability for the message being delivered and received, that means it's all in your power. And when you change the conversation, you change the outcome. So now let's look at the core of what we'll be working on today. I've poured you a foundation of a framework, of a coaching framework you can use in every one-on-one or situational coaching conversation. I've given you the 60-second coaching strategy you can begin any conversation with when someone approaches you looking for your help. Now it's time to go deeper. What do the conversations sound like when you have to have a quote-unquote difficult conversation? And this is where enrollment comes in. So I'm going to share with you again the model for enrollment, because it's really easy, and I'm going to break it down even further after I share this one slide with you. Well, the first thing we need to do is assess the timing of the conversation. You can't just walk up to someone and start, hey, listen, you got a minute? I want to talk to you about your performance. Okay, well, if you want to freak people out, do that. Number one, you're the boss. Got a minute? You're playing the power card. What are they going to say? Oh, no, boss, I don't have a minute. Actually, I won't have a minute till 2025. They're going to say, of course I have a minute. And what did you say after that? To talk about your productivity and performance? You just put them in a heightened state of fear because they have no idea what your intention is. Now listen to this. I wanted to talk to you about a few things I've noticed that if we can work on, would make you even more successful and eliminate some of the challenges and additional work on your plate. Now they see what's in it for them. The WIFM, what's in it for me? Everyone is tuned into that because everyone has their own agenda just like you do. Do you have a few minutes now, or are you in the middle of something? Give them the opportunity to say, you know what, let me just finish this one email proposal conversation. Can we meet later on this afternoon? Fine. You rather get someone when they're open to a conversation rather than someone who might be having a bad day or now you're interrupting them. How do you think they're going to be when you're having that conversation? Certainly not fully engaged. Okay? So now you set the precedent, and now this is about you approaching people with critical conversations that you've never had to have before. So here's the ELADS framework. We got a leads framework, coaching, ELADS framework, enrolling, because all we're doing is we're swapping the E and the L. In the leads framework, when you're coaching someone, it's always about them. So they're doing the L, they're doing the learn, it's their agenda. However, since you're initiating these conversations, you're doing the L. So you, in essence, need to enroll them and create positive buy-in around your agenda. Now, how do you do that? Here we go. What I want for you is to achieve the goals and success you want in your career. In enrolling them, I took a stand for them. I used the wanting for statement, which is exceptionally powerful because it takes a stand for them. Now, you've already told them what's in it for them. I want you to be more successful and achieve your goals. Hey, boss, so do I. Now you can hit them directly with either what you've observed or with any changes that are being made in the organization. In this example, it was about the manager noticing a couple of behaviors that could really impact the salesperson's performance. So now the continued part of this conversation is, well, I've noticed a few things that you're doing that could potentially hurt your personal brand and productivity. Well, you can say that now because you started off with a positive intent. Okay, so now why are we doing this? Well, that's why I want to discuss how I can best support you to achieve your goals without the overwhelming stress. And of course, you need affirmation. You need to ask a close-ended question. Are you open to discussing this? Yes or no? And now look what happens, everyone. There's the enrollment part. You've created the foundation and atmosphere for coaching to occur. The only difference is you initiated the conversation rather than they did. And that's why if you look at step 5, there's the rest of the coaching framework: assess, define, support. Now let's start looking at this and seeing how it plays out in action. Enrollment is very simple. Most managers are really good with telling people what we're doing, what's changing, what they're responsible for. Here's what we're doing. Well, boss, why are we doing it? Well, because that's what I was told we have to do, so we have to do it. Well, if they want to keep their job, they might engage in that exercise and honor whatever they need to do. However, how much output do you think you're getting? Because they don't see what's in it for them. Because we need to continue with, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, and here's what's in it for you. And those last two components of the parts in the conversation that managers miss. So let's now dive into some of these conversations and why it is so critical to enroll people before having a conversation that you need to initiate. It's very simple. If I send you an email and in the subject matter of the email, the body of, the subject line, it reads, I'm your manager, you're my employee. I send you an email. In the subject line, it reads, call me ASAP in all caps. That's it. What's your first reaction? It's not going to be, my boss wants to tell me how awesome I am. Chances are it's going to be, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Am I getting fired? Did I lose a big deal? Am I being put on a performance improvement plan? Here's the challenge, everyone, and why enrollment is critical as a leader and manager and salesperson to master. Because when intentions aren't clear, people default to fear. So let's now start looking at some of the most critical enrollment conversations you need to have, potentially in a chronological order. Now, speaking of chronological orders, before you can have any relationship with them deeper than a superficial one, where you want to develop that deeper engagement and trust that you've never had before, especially when you're trying to build relationships on a one-dimensional screen, you need to take the time to set positive intent and how you're going to be supporting them. So the first thing we need to do before we do any coaching is we need to enroll them in it. Because let's now go back to the example that I shared with the email. So finally, after freaking out for about 20 minutes, you muster up the courage to pick up the phone and call your boss. And you know what the boss says? Hey, I just want to let you know you did a great job last quarter. I know you started slow and you ran into some challenges, but you were able to turn it around. And I just want to let you know I admire your commitment and endurance to this. Well done. Don't even tell me you saw that one coming, because when intentions aren't clear, we default to fear. So the first thing we need to do if we're coaching people is we need to set the foundation of what coaching is and how they like to be coached. So keep in mind, you will have all these talk tracks. I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly so you can hear how they sound and land on you. This is a one-on-one conversation that you'll be having with each person on your team, especially if you're in a situation where you're coaching people in an existing team and you're finding that some people are more open to coaching and some people are more resistant to it. Those that are resistant to it, I will make your job very easy. It comes down to one reason and one reason only. You didn't enroll them effectively. So now let's take a look at what it sounds like on a one-on-one conversation. Mr. or Mrs. Employee, what I want for you is to experience the level of success you want in your career. And as your manager, it's my responsibility to support you in order to do so. That's why I've been working on my skills to become the best coach I can for you to maximize your potential. And just think about sports. This coach is always there to make sure each player is on the top of their game. Now, I learned how I can be a better manager and coach so I can support you around achieving your goals faster. Now, keep in mind, this learning curve is something we're both going through together. So I may not get it perfect the first time, which is why I'll be looking for some feedback and coaching from you as well. What's most important is you understand my intentions here. So let's schedule some time to talk about what your perception of coaching is, so we can create a mutually agreed upon understanding and definition of coaching, set some measurable expectations, and what I can do to make this a valuable experience. Are you open to discussing this to ensure that the coaching we do will be beneficial for you? You do that, you'll get enrollment every time. Because if you just start leading with questions, where yesterday you led with answers, you've changed the rules in the middle of the game and you didn't tell them why. Now, of course, since we've established the baseline of having this conversation, where's the ADS? Here it is, everyone, the just did the EL. Here's the ADS, assess, define, support. And I'm going to run through these questions pretty quickly because you will have them. Number one, how will you define coaching? You need to even the playing field. Have you ever been coached before? What was your experience like? If you're wondering why people are resistant to you, it's not always about you. It could be about their past manager that they're taking their face and putting it right on you, thinking you're going to be the same toxic manager as the one that you used to have, which is why you need to recreate a new possibility. Okay, just like in the enrollment statement, notice I use the sports analogy. That's bulletproof because every great player has a coach on the sidelines because players can't self-diagnose when they're in the middle of the game. That's where the coach comes in. And I also demonstrated vulnerability by saying, hey, listen, I'm not going to get this right, which gives you the freedom to not get it right. And it's okay. It's not right or wrong. It's just you're going through that evolutionary step of changing how you engage with people. So letting people know you're not going to get it right the first time makes you human. And asking for their help stimulates the law of reciprocity. That is, if I'm open to your coaching, you'll be open to mine. So let's continue with a few more of these questions. How do you like to be managed? How about accountability? This is something every manager struggles with. Keith, I'm banging my head against the wall trying to come up with how to hold people accountable. I don't want to give them too much rope or they're going to hang themselves, or I don't want to micromanage them. Well, you're asking the wrong person. Ask the coachee. Look at question number 7. How can I hold you accountable, or in a softer way, be your accountability partner so you can achieve your goals in a way that would sound supportive and not negative or like I'm micromanaging you? What happens in terms of follow-up? How do you hold them accountable for follow-up, or if they didn't follow up with the commitments they make? How do you bring that up? Number 8, how would you like me to follow up with you if you don't honor the commitments you make, or if I notice an opportunity for you to excel? How do you want me to bring it up so you're open to the message? When you ask these questions, they're setting the rules of engagement. They're telling you how they want to be held accountable and followed up. And that guy. And of course, number 9, just like I would ask any prospect, what concerns, if any, because maybe they don't have any, do you have about our coaching and what we discuss? Let's go ahead and schedule our first coaching session. So there's your framework for first step, enrolling people in coaching. Let's continue now, because it's one thing to enroll people in coaching, but how do you continually hold them accountable on a daily basis where it won't take up any of your time? You create an accountability partnership. And what that sounds like is what you're seeing here on the slide. What I want for you is to honor your values, your goals, your priorities, so you can achieve what matters most to you. Of course, I want to ensure I'm doing the same while best supporting you. To support each other in a way where we both achieve our goals while honoring our values that are most important to us, let's create an accountability partnership. Now, what this means is, if any time either you or I, we fail to honor our values or fall into any ineffective or damaging behavior that could impact our personal brand, productivity, and goals, we both have permission to point this out immediately to each other so we can immediately shift back to honoring our core values and doing what's best for us, the team, and the company. Are you open to creating this type of partnership to accelerate our success? This one enrollment statement to enroll them in this type of partnership will save you countless hours. It will also avoid the fear of confrontation and conflict, which most people suffer from. So notice here, it's a mutual accountability partnership. You get to call them out immediately. They get to call you out immediately. All you need to do is establish what that's going to look like when you need to call them out. But the most important thing now is you have permission So when you call them out, they're not going to get frustrated. They're not going to feel that they're being attacked because they know your intention is pure. So let's keep going. How do you immediately build or rebuild trust? Okay, now there are situations where, whether it's with a customer, a prospect, coworker, direct report, how do you immediately build or rebuild trust? A lot of people say, oh, you know what? I have some great relationships with these people on my team, but these people, not so good. And I'll ask them, so with the people you don't have a good trusted or coaching relationship with, what do you do? And they say, oh, well, I just don't coach them. I coach the other people I like. Well, you're going to find greater breakthroughs with the people you're struggling with than the people you like and get along with. How do you do this? It's a conversation. Here it is. Again, I know these talk tracks are long, but I want to give them to you so you can take them, make them your own while keeping the spirit of the message intact. So here's how to build or rebuild trust in one conversation. What I want for you is to feel that we create a culture of collaboration, connection, and make it a great place to work. And we can only do this if we all have a voice and how to achieve this, and most importantly, create the trust needed for us to thrive. That's why I'd like to talk to you about what it means to develop a trusting environment, a trusted and valued relationship, where you can have with me, your manager, so I can respect your boundaries and how I can support you. And if at any point I did anything to hurt or erode our trust, I apologize and would love to hit the reset button on our relationship. Are you open to having this conversation? Apologies go a long way. It opens people up. I can really use your help goes a long way. It opens people up to the conversation. Saying you'd like to hit the reset button on the relationship or conversation demonstrates your desire to want to improve and deliver more value to the other person, while demonstrating an opportunity to want to rebuild or build that relationship. So there it is. Now the ADS starts. How would you define trust? You can't talk about trust unless you have a very clear mutual definition of what trust is. Don't assume it. What does trust mean to you? How do you build trust in a relationship? What are things that could negatively impact our relationship? How can I earn and build your trust? And conversely, what would destroy the trust we've built? You have now enrolled them in this conversation and set up the parameters of how to build a trusted, deeper, connected relationship. But we're not done here, because we have lots of other conversations that we struggle with, because these are the conversations that leaders like you are coming to me for coaching every day. Keith, I got the coaching model, but I need to have this conversation with someone. How do I do it? Because it failed the last time. Coaching is a precise language, and this is why we're studying enrollment. Now, here's the easy one. How to reset relationships and conversations. A lot of people, a lot of managers say, well, Keith, I totally destroyed that relationship. Or, there's something happened and it just really strained our trust a couple of years ago. And you're still tolerating that? Well, how about if you can set a relationship in one conversation? Here we go. Let's paint the picture. You just had a conversation with someone. It did not go very well. Well, you have a choice. You can live with it, or you can take accountability and recreate a new possibility. And here's what it sounds like to do that. John, I was reflecting on our last conversation, which, by the way, shows that you care enough that you were thinking about it. And I owe you an apology. You're going to get their attention right away. I know we didn't see eye to eye and achieve the outcome you were looking for. That's why I want to apologize. And if I did anything that may have upset or hurt you or our relationship, that's why I can really use your help. I'm hoping we can hit the reset button on our relationship or that conversation we had and design it in a way where it's mutually beneficial. so you can hit your goals without the stress, and I can support you the way you want. See, we've all heard that expression, there's no second chance for a first impression. Well, yes, there is. You always have a second chance to make a good first impression because you can always reset trust, relationships, accountability, anything, as long as you're enrolling them with the proper language. So let's see how many other templates we have. Oh, this is one of my favorite ones. This is a conversation that if you already have, email me and I will pay you $500. Unless, of course, I've given this to you before. Great companies recognize the need to train managers and salespeople on new critical conversations with their team and with their customers that connect people in a deeper, personal, and more meaningful way. Now that sounds really good, and we can talk that talk all day long, but the question you want to ask yourself is, Keith, how do I do this? Well, I'm going to share with you a conversation that is the foundation of what I mentioned earlier in terms of what the sales and leadership strategy is today, which is care. Yes, I know you care about your people. I know you care about your family. I know you care about your customers and prospects. I know you're coming from a good place. But if you can't express that in a conversation, people will always default to fear. And one of the things today that we are struggling with more than ever is this thing called life balance. Now, let me just break this down and give you a new definition of life balance, because life balance implies that you have a balance between your work perfectly with your personal life, values, and priorities. All right, I'm a coach. I create new possibilities, but I'm also a grounded realist. Okay. When you are creating new possibilities, okay, it has to start with that new conversation and definition. So what if life balance now is defined as how you can manage the imbalances in your life? And this is a conversation we never really had to have because none of us have been in a position where we've gone through a pandemic and where 80% of companies today are either fully remote or have a hybrid model now, which they've never had before. So how do you reconnect with people in a deeper way when people are feeling isolated, alone? And that's where the disengagement comes from. And that's where the turnover comes from. And that's when you guys call me and say, Keith, I'm having a really hard time building my team and getting that buy-in and excitement back. Let's look at a way where you can create this. And here's the template. With the extreme change around how we live and work, especially now that we're all working remote, it's easy to feel isolated and uncertain about the future. I know I've been struggling in certain areas. That's why I wanted to discuss how I can best support you in this new environment so that you're productive, you're connected to the team, and to your goals and opportunities while maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And I'd love to hear how you're managing all the changes as well. Are you open to talking about this now? This has encapsulated all of the tools and strategies that we have discussed to date on how to create an effective enrollment talk track. Now that you position this, the person, just like in the other conversations, because they see the value and what's in it for them and that their agenda will be satisfied, they are now open to the conversation. So now here comes the ADS, guys. Assess, define, support. And here's just a handful of questions you can ask that I guarantee you probably never asked your people unless you've seen these questions, because I guarantee your manager has never asked you these questions. And the problem is this. It's not that, again, you don't want to support your people. But if we as leaders are not getting what we need, it's very difficult to recognize the needs of others. So what questions can you use to facilitate this conversation? Notice these are all focused on who they are and their personal life, making that the priority, not pushing for quota and results. So number one, what's working well? What, if anything, are you struggling with? How are you managing and balancing your personal responsibilities while staying productive at work? How you're managing your day. Can you actually send me a screenshot of what your weekly routine looks like so we can compare them on how we both manage our time? If you haven't looked at your people's routines, you haven't coached time management, life balance, and time mastery. Okay? It's a great opportunity. Don't assume that they're being productive. Don't assume that they have a good working calendar. See a screenshot of their calendar. It will give you a greater insight and opportunities to support and coach them. Let's keep going. How have you set boundaries and expectations with your family when you're working at home to ensure you're productive and not distracted? That's a question you never had to ask. How about number 6? What's your daily self-care regimen? Now, in my experience over the last few years, one of the things I'm noticing with people is that self-care has been thrown out the window. And now that we're trying to reinvent our lives in our new remote world, we need to get back and taking care of ourselves. And one of my core values is extreme self-care. So a lot of people are coming to me and saying, Keith, I used to exercise and work out 4 times a week. Now I'm doing nothing. Okay. My first question is, do you have it scheduled in your calendar? The answer is typically no. My response, if you don't have the appointment, you don't have the commitment. If it takes up time, it needs to be scheduled. So we need to actually schedule our self-care time. That can mean anything from doing a morning routine, whether that means taking a walk, enjoying time with our kids, reading the Bible, meditating, okay? Whatever puts you in a good place so that you can be focused and centered, okay? That's taking care of yourself. Now, again, physically, mentally, we need to do that too. So what are you doing to take care of yourself? Just let me drive this home with one point. Self-care is non-negotiable. Let's move to another question that I think affects every single person on this planet. How are you turning off work at the end of the day so you can be present and enjoy your family and the time you have with them? I don't suppose you struggle with being present and living in the moment. Is my sarcasm translating? Because unfortunately, the global epidemic is because we have a target on our back, we're always focused on what's next. And the transformational shift that we need to make to be the best salesperson, person, and leader is to shift to what's now in the moment, because that's all we have. Number 8, okay, now what's your preferred method of communication? I don't know. Do you want me to call you, email you, snail mail you, Morse code? Number 9, how often do you want me to connect with you and the team so that you feel connected and not isolated? And finally, how can I best support you to create a productive, rewarding, and enjoyable workplace so you can achieve your goals while honoring your values and priorities? This conversation, I would suggest having number 1 with your peers and number 2 with your team. And I promise you, they will have nothing but deep appreciation for this. Okay, now we're moving into one of our final conversations here, which is one of the traps that managers fall into. We need as leaders to tap into the individuality of our people, right? I mean, after all, our team is comprised of unique individuals. Why should we lead them all the same? Okay, now the problem that gets us in trouble when it comes to how do I motivate, how do I hold people accountable, how do I bring something up that might be tough for them to hear. Your next inner narrative is going to sound like, well, this is how I do it. This is how I like to when people do it to me. So I'll assume that they like to be managed, held accountable, and motivated the same way. Well, that's a massive, massive assumption, okay? Because the fact is, people are motivated based on what they want, not what you want. Don't you want to make more money and be the top salesperson? Actually, I'm making a good living, boss. I'm a good corporate citizen. I'm hitting my numbers, and I enjoy my downtime. Okay, but if you just work harder and put some more time in, you could be the top salesperson and make more money. But I don't want to sacrifice my personal life to do that. You keep having that conversation, you could push a solid B player out the door. Okay, and we can't care more about the other person's job than they do. We can't want more for other people than they want for themselves. That's why we can't, what I call, coach, manage, communicate in our own image, because now we're just managing and coaching the way we like to be managed and coached. And we're just building mini me's, robots, and absolutely eroding trust. So how would you then uncover people's individual, their drive, their motivation, the very things that are going to get them out of bed every day to be productive members of society and their family, and especially for you in your organization? Now, this is a conversation. You can't just walk up to someone and say, so what makes you happy? What motivates you every day? What gets you out of bed? They're going to look at you like you're weird because you didn't set intent. Here's the enrollment statement. What I want for you is to feel my primary role is to make you more valuable while aligning your personal goals with the objectives and responsibilities you have at work. To best understand how we can, I'd like to learn more about you and what's most important to you. By the way, feel free to ask any of these questions to me as well. Are you open to collaborating on this? Just enrolled them. What kicks in? ADS, assess, define, support, and here we go. What question? And by the way, these are just 11 questions. Some of them you may ask. These just happen to be 11 questions that I happen to prefer using. What's most important in your career? What motivates you to come to work? How do you like to be acknowledged for a job well done? What gives you a sense of accomplishment at the end of each day? Here's one of my favorite questions. If you didn't have to work, what would you do with your time? And since there's no such thing as a perfect coaching question, typically the best question is the one that's coming right from your gut and is the most simplest. For example, what makes you happy? So now you're uncovering what drives each individual, and you can now coach them based on what their core values are, priorities, and personal goals are. So you can now align their personal goals with the objectives at work. And guess what that's called? Enrollment. And that's what we've been doing. Aligning personal goals with objectives at work. So I have a really, really cool exercise that I'm going to share with you that I've never shared with anyone before other than my clients. I'm just putting it out there because this is actually one of the largest number of people who registered for this course that I've ever had, over 1,000 people. This is an exercise that you can do beyond just asking the questions. Of course, if it's an exercise and you're giving it to them, you can't just say, do this because you didn't set intent. They're not going to do it because they have no idea why you're asking them to. Are you putting this in my personal file? Is this going to HR? That's why we need to set positive intent. So here we go. To enroll people in this exercise, and let me give you a little sense of what I'm enrolling people in. It's this. So you're going to have this slide, and I'm going to suggest you do this exercise as well. You do it with your peers. You do it with your team. You could do it as a peer exercise during a meeting. You could do it or one-on-one during a coaching conversation with each one of your peers or with your employees' direct reports. Because remember, coaching isn't just for our employees. Coaching goes up, coaching goes lateral, peer-to-peer, and coaching also goes from your salespeople up to you. So here's the chart, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. And now I want to go back to the enrollment statement now that you have context. What I want for you, there's that wanting for statement again, is to feel your career complements what's most important in your life so that you can also achieve your personal goals as well. I was introduced to a great tool to help uncover a person's individual motivation. And I found this exercise very useful when completing it, and I thought it would be worthwhile for you to try as well. Basically, it's a list of about 50 different things or items that inspire us, values, or things that motivate us at work. These are the priorities that provide more purpose and satisfaction from our career, along with the values that we treasure most, which motivate us every day. So take about 10 minutes to review this chart and just circle the top 5 items that jump out to you as most important. Then we'll schedule a time to review it together. And if you're interested, I'll be happy to share my results with you as well. There's that law of reciprocity kicking in again. When the work you do is in alignment with your values and priorities, your career becomes the vehicle for you to get what you want most. And of course, you need affirmation that they want to have the conversation. Are you open to having this conversation? And that's what you do. You give them this chart, you have them fill it out, you regroup, and you talk about it. Now, the value and the impact, the exponential impact you can drive now is that when you're focused on holding people accountable around their goals, you can now align them with their priorities and personal goals and values. In other words, if you achieve this at work, you get this personally. And that's what enrollment does. It aligns, it creates a North Star, it creates a guiding light for us to achieve what matters most for us in our life and in our career. So just to start wrapping up here, and I know we're getting on the top of time here, I want everyone to just stop and think for a second. As we've gone through these conversations, and these are just 5 of so many more conversations that we need to master as leaders so we can truly develop the engaged, high-performing team that we all want. It starts with a transformational shift in your thinking, and that starts with the question you ask when you wake up in the morning. And the questions that managers and salespeople ask is, how am I going to, get my team, to achieve their business objectives and sales goals? That's the wrong question. I know it's important, but it's the wrong question. See, the right question is, what do I need to do to make my people, my customers, more valuable today than they were yesterday? See, now you're focused on the primary objective, which is to make your people more valuable every single day. Remember, the good news about everything we talked about as we bring our conversation to conclusion is that I hope you noticed that with every talk track that we discussed, it creates a new possibility for you and for that other person. And isn't that the definition of coaching? The art and language of creating new possibilities. But those changes always start with you. And that's the good news because it's in your power. So to wrap up, number 1, materials. You'll be getting them from me. I will be posting them on LinkedIn in my next blog post, along with the link to the recording of this session. If you don't get it, feel free to email me or email me personally at keithr@keithrosen.com. Now, I mentioned earlier about a bonus. So here's the bonus for those of you who hung on to the end of the program and for those of you who are watching it now. If you like what we did today and what we covered, and if you feel it would be incredibly valuable, whether to your salespeople or to your management team, email me and I'd be happy to deliver a Q&A sales leadership coaching event for your team for free. Now, why am I doing this for free? Because I find that the best way to serve my family is to start by losing myself in the service of others. So I have been blessed working with wonderful clients and leaders and managers like you. And this is my way of just giving back, especially in times like this. So I truly hope you take advantage of it, because I can tell you now, in the 1 hour that we do this Q&A, you're going to get your whole sales team riled up, energized, motivated, and equipped with tools that they can drive results that day. A few other reminders. I have a few free courses that I'm going to be sharing with you. Pop on my website, keithrosen.com. They will be listed there in my latest blog. I will also be posting those resources in my blog as well, so you could download them there if that's easier for you. So finally, remember the ABCs and AB of leadership. Number one, always be coaching. And number two, always be enrolling, because nothing will happen. No changes will happen. No improvements will happen if you don't have the alignment and buy-in of the people you're talking with. So here's a final question. There are 3 rabbits sitting on a log. One rabbit decides to hop off. How many are left? 3. Because there's a difference between deciding and doing. We could all decide that, oh my gosh, these conversations are so powerful, Keith. I can imagine what they would do for me and for my relationships, for sales and for my team. And then we listen to this, and then we go back in the real world, and we default back to our old toxic habits. This takes time. Just like if you're learning a new sport, you need to do it repetition and practice. And eventually, you will shift from enrolling in coaching from your head to coaching from your heart. Remember, the most simplest form, if you're approaching someone that you have to have a conversation with, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. And here's what's in it for you. So thank you so much for carving out the time for this session. I certainly hope it achieved your objectives. One other thing, if we're not connected on Twitter or LinkedIn, please send me an invite, because I'm always posting new content there. So in conclusion, I hope this met your expectations. Thanks again. If you have any questions, feel free on the content we talked about to, again, ping me on LinkedIn or my blog, or send me an email, and I'd be happy to support you any way I can. My mobile number, if you'd like to text me, is 516-231-2774. And again, why am I giving you my mobile number? Because I want for you to feel like you have someone in your corner unconditionally supporting you. And that's me. So with that said, I thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing about the wins that you've had as a result of mastering the art of enrollment. And I wish you all extreme success. Until our next session, here's Keith Rosen signing off. Bye.